Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a quick colour grading tutorial for the Milky Way. Now, I downloaded this photo off the internet, so if you guys want to go ahead, I will try and leave the link down below for where you can get this photo. But first of all, we're just going to start off by decreasing the temperature. We want the sky to be a little bit more blue. We're going to go ahead and brighten up the exposure just to expose that sky. I'm not going to lift up the shadows too much because you can see there's no detail there, so there's no point. I'm going to get the highlights, and I'm just going to raise the highlights, raise up those whites and drop down those blacks. I'm then going to come to clarity, and I'm just going to drop off the clarity to about -12, -10, around there. As for the vibrance and saturation, I'm going to leave the vibrance where it is and drop the saturation and just increase the vibrance ever so slightly. Tone curve, we're going to introduce a simple S curve that we usually use, so we're just going to drag up there and drop those shadows. Nothing too much, just enough that we really do bring out the sky a little bit more. If I turn that off and turn it on again, you can see we just introduced a little bit more contrast. So I am going to add a tiny little bit of fade into the shadows just to try and flatten this image a little bit more. Okay, so you close that up, and now we're on to the HSL slider. So hues on the HSL slider allow us to change the colours of each colour in this image. Now, you'll see in this image, mostly we just have blues, greens and aquas, so we're not really going to be adjusting any of these other ones. Well, I'm going to get the greens and I'm going to slide those down to about -43. The aquas, you can see if I decrease too much, makes it very green, so I'm going to decrease the aquas just because I like the effect it gives the sky here. And then I'm going to get the blues, and I am going to increase the blues to about +10, I think. So if I turn the HSL off, you can see the before and the after. As for the saturation, again, we won't be messing around with the red, orange and the yellow. I'm just going to will drop the yellow off completely. I will drop the orange off and also the red off, just because there is some light pollution down at the bottom, and if there is any of that leaking into the image, I don't want it to be there. So I'm just going to get the magentas as well and drop that to 0. And I'm probably going to get the purples and increase those slightly because there are some purples in the sky here. You can see here if I adjust the purple slider, I'm going to drag the purple down in the hues, and the magentas I'm just going to leave alone. As to the saturation, in the greens, I'm going to desaturate the greens to about -42. I'm going to increase the saturation of the aquas, and then I'm going to get the blue saturation, and I'm going to probably increase the blue saturation, increase the blue saturation to about +8. Finally, we have the luminance. Now, again, with the reds, oranges and yellows, we're not really seeing anything, so we're just going to leave those. It doesn't really make any difference where they are. For the greens, I'm going to leave those at 0. The aquas, I'm going to try and brighten up a bit, and the blues, I'm also going to brighten up to about +45, just because it really brings out that Milky Way there. Now, if I press the / key, you can see the before, and if I press it again, you can see the after of this image. So that leaves us now with split toning. If you press Alt on your keyboard, you can scrub this along, and you can see the colours you're going to add to the highlights. Seeing as we've already got a lot of blues there, I'm kind of thinking I might add around +42, just to kind of bring out a little bit of a different colour in the sky, just to kind of make it a little bit less blue. I'm just going to drag up the saturation to about +27. Now if I turn off the split toning and turn it back on again, you can see the difference that's made. It's all a matter of personal preference, what colour you want your image to be, but I'm just going to try and add some orange to the Milky Way here. Then for the shadows, do the same thing, press Alt on your keyboard and slide it along. I'm looking for probably around 188, I think is a good bet. 199, just to add some more blues into the shadows, and I'm going to drag the saturation up to about +10. Okay, so closing up the split toning, we're moving down onto detail. When you do edit Milky Way photos, you will tend to find you increase the noise in the photo. So come down to noise reduction, and you just want to whack that up to about +20, +25. You don't really want to go too much higher than there, otherwise your image starts to look a little bit weird. In the case of this image, I'm thinking 25 maximum. I may even just go for 20. Don't be annoyed if you have loads of noise in there. Obviously, if you have too much noise, try and get rid of it, but don't be annoyed if there is a bit of noise, because it is expected for these types of photos. Okay, finally, camera calibration. I'm going to get the red primary, and I'm just going to increase the saturation in the red primary. I'm going to get the green primary and also increase the saturation, and then I'm going to get the blue primary and decrease the saturation there. The idea here is we're just trying to mess around with the colours a little bit more than we were in the HSL slider. So if I turn that off and turn it on again, you can see it's made a slight change. I'm then going to get the shadows and drag those down to about -3. Again, so if I turn off the camera calibration, you can see the before and the after. One thing that's been annoying me about this is all this space down here that we don't really need, so you can do two options. One, you can get the gradient filter and just drag that up here, reset everything to 0 by double clicking effect, and then just drag down the exposure just to darken the bottom of the image. However, I really don't think it's necessary to have it in there, so I'm just going to come here and I'm just going to crop. You can see here I actually did rotate it to make the horizon completely flat, so you can rotate it to that angle if you guys are following along. Okay, so we're basically done now with all of these. One thing I would like to do is get the gradient tool, create a new gradient tool, double click on effect to reset it to 0, and then just drag it down for the night sky, introducing a little bit of gradient there. And then I'm going to come to here, increase the contrast, increase the highlights, not too much, probably about to +10, get the whites and whack up the whites to about +20, drop the blacks to about -16, get the clarity, increase the clarity just to about 30, really making those stars pop out, and then getting the saturation and decreasing the saturation. You can also introduce a little bit of noise reduction as well, just because it will help, just because you've actually introduced some more noise by editing that further. So if I press the backslash key on my keyboard, you can see how really quickly we've come from this all the way to this. So obviously this is a lot more interesting to look at than this. It's obviously quite a large, heavy edit, but it depends on what sort of look you're going for. Now finally we're going to come up to here to the brush tool, select new, double click on effect to reset everything to 0, and then if you come down to clarity, lower the blacks, increase the whites, really to about +10, -10, get the contrast, increase the contrast about +10, and all we're going to do here is just paint over the Milky Way, and we're going to try and make these dust trails here, the darker parts of the Milky Way, slightly more obvious and slightly more visible, just to kind of make that Milky Way stand out, because after all that is the main object of this entire image. Once we've done that, I'm going to click new again, double click in effect, I'm going to increase the temperature to about +10, and then increase my brush size. And I'm just going to paint over this area here of the Milky Way, because you tend to find around the centre of the Milky Way it is slightly warmer light. I'm then going to get the tint and also put that on about +10 as well. So there we are, I think we're basically done. If I click done on the keyboard, you can see this is the final edit. We edited that really quickly. You guys can spend longer on it if you want to, but I've done this edit about 5 times now because this video kept on failing, so I'm kind of got to the point now I know all the settings that work for this photo. Now your photo will be slightly different depending on the conditions you take it in. You may be able to see more of the Milky Way. You can see here there is some light pollution down here, which does affect how much of the Milky Way you can see. But again, if I select the before image and the after, you can see we've really brought out that Milky Way. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video today. It'd be great if you could go check us out on Instagram and our website down below. If not, I'll see you in the next video. Live long and prosper.